Throughout the show, we've seen many versions of Rick and Morty, and their alternates have become one of the main themes of the series. This concept was first introduced in the 10th episode of the first season, and it truly changed the trajectory of the show from that point on. We've encountered numerous unique and interesting versions of Rick, and I want to talk about them, starting with the original, Rick C-137, who is the titular main protagonist of the series. At the beginning, he was very toxic, afraid of attachment, and nihilistic, but as time went on, he became more open and revealed that he only used his toxicity to mask his insecurities. Since he's the main Rick we've been following for the entire series, I won't talk much about him because, let's be honest, you probably already know almost everything about Rick C-137, so let's move on to other interesting versions of him, first introduced in Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind. When I first watched that episode, one character in particular caught my attention. This version wears Morty's clothes and Rick's lab coat. He has Morty's head shape and facial structure, but Rick's hairstyle, physique, and coloring. To this day, we don't know if he's a Rick or a Morty, or a combination of both. The fact that he's standing alone without a Rick or Morty by his side further supports his uniqueness. I really hope he survived the Citadel attacks and will make a proper debut soon because, let's be honest, his appearance is fascinating even for a show like Rick and Morty. The last real Rick related to the Citadel introduced in the series is Homesteader Rick. He debuts in Season 8 and was the head engineer of the cloning department on the Citadel, essentially the director. He created multiple clones of Ricks and Mortys, including Boss Hog Rick, who was made to promote Gumbo. This was his job until the Citadel was destroyed by Evil Morty in a ploy to escape the Central Finite Curve. In Dimension C-131, Rick C-137 reset portal travelers, sending this Rick back to his home universe. Feeling guilty about the abandoned clones likely left in the Citadel's ruins, he found a way to leave his dimension and return to the wreckage on a red planet. There, he set up a homestead near a town of Mortys to protect them from rogue Rick clones on the planet. One day, Rick C-137 and Morty Prime crash-landed on his homestead. Homesteader Rick aimed a shotgun at C-137, who explained he just needed to fix a window. After they left, the homesteader continued his farm work, feeding animals, harvesting corn, and producing a blue cloning fluid. Eventually, he and the Mortytown Mortys were attacked by a gang of Ricks. To avenge his animals and save the Mortys, he went to the Citadel and sacrificed himself so they could escape. He's one of the few Ricks from the Citadel who completely redeemed himself, and I hope we'll see him again in a flashback. Beside him, the one who intrigued the most was Trafficker Rick. He used to be the leader of a trafficking group for Big Rick. He kidnaps a Morty with the other Ricks as they travel back to the Citadel within his ship. It is later revealed that he, along with the other Trafficker Ricks, killed Homesteader Rick's pets, destroyed his home, and made fun of his collection of Tori Amos albums. Homesteader Rick, in actuality, also has no loyalty towards Big Rick as he is not interested in reconstructing the Citadel. However, when Trafficker Rick attempts to steal Big Rick's backup portal gun fluid, Big Rick uses his desk gun to kill him. Another Rick that was introduced in the 8th season was the Druggy Rick. His true origins are unknown. He's either the native Rick of the Grand Central Dimension or came to occupy it after the original Rick and Smith family left on an adventure and never returned. Druggy Rick had seemingly been living with Boss Jerry at Grand Central for some time. Prior to his appearance in No Mortland, Boss Jerry had decided Jerry's did not need to be reliant on Rick's. Rick's should be reliant on Jerry's. Therefore, he managed to turn Druggy Rick into a mere slave. When Mooch Jerry and Jerry Smith of Dimension 5126 arrive at Grand Central, Druggy Rick is seen loafing in a chair and smoking some unknown green crystals. After the conversation between Mooch Jerry, Jerry 5126 and Boss Jerry turns sour. The latter says Jerry's don't need to depend on a Rick and demonstrates this by grabbing Druggy Rick by the hair and ordering him to lead the two Jerrys out of Grand Central and blacklist them. Druggy Rick reappears when Mooch Jerry and Jerry 5126 eventually make their way back to Grand Central and ride a giant mouse away. Druggy Rick, who was again loafing in a chair, asks if Boss Jerry just saw the two of them riding a giant mouse. Boss Jerry drugs him out of his chair and calls him useless, to which Druggy Rick replies by pointing out Boss Jerry became much meaner after gaining his titular jacket and berates him for always dragging him out of chairs. Boss Jerry pushes Druggy Rick back into his lawn chair before departing. Another interesting version of Rick that might not get enough attention is, believe it or not, Doofus Rick. Constantly mocked by other Ricks, he uses that perception to hide his true intelligence and capabilities, which were revealed in the final chapter of the original Rick and Morty comic series. In that chapter, we meet the Illumarics, who manipulate one of the comic's main villains, Peacock, and Rick's Morty. Their plan? Have Peacock separate Rick from Morty, brainwash Morty to distract Rick, and then drop the universe bomb. That's exactly what happens. While the Smith family discusses Rick and Morty's actions, a green portal opens and a universe bomb drops into Rick's garage. These bombs, created by Cold War-era arms race wizard Rick, are capable of destroying entire universes without any chance of regeneration. Rick, horrified, quickly opens a portal and escapes with Morty. He travels to the Illumarics' universe and, in a shocking twist, reveals that he was the original founder of their organization. He kills 5 Ricks and leaves one alive to get information on defusing the bomb. The last Rick says it takes Rick's heart to stop it. Frustrated, Rick kills him too. He then tells Doofus Rick they are free and can do whatever they want. Rick and Morty return to the garage and try defusing the bomb, even using a clone heart, but it fails. Rick then realizes the worst thing that could happen to a Rick. He got emotionally attached to a universe and his Morty. He hates that he cares, but admits he does. He hoped opening up to Morty would stop the bomb, but it doesn't. The universe is destroyed. In a final twist, it's revealed that the Illumarics were truly founded by the Doofus Ricks all along. No matter what Rick did, the universe bomb was unstoppable. They had manipulated Rick's ego and narcissism to make him believe he was in control, when in fact, Doofus Ricks were the real puppet masters. Their next target? Rick C-137. This was an extremely compelling storyline. Doofus Ricks are usually considered the weakest, but clearly they are not to be underestimated. I hope we see Doofus Rick in action soon. He has massive potential. Still, none of them compare to the impact Rick Prime had on the series. He was teased for years before finally debuting. His first reference wasn't in the fake backstory, but all the way back in Season 1. Initially, he was referred to as Weird Rick in Pocket Mortys and by Evil Rick in Close Rick Counters of the Rick kind. Though currently dead, Rick Prime remains mysterious. We know little. He invented portal tech, was married to Diane, and had a daughter named Beth. His marriage failed and he led an organization of Ricks before the Citadel's creation. I'm sure we'll learn more in future Citadel-related episodes. The first villain Rick introduced, however, was Evil Rick, grandfather of Evil Morty. After Morty refused to continue their adventures, Evil Rick scoffed at him. Morty drugged him, implanted control devices, and essentially enslaved him. It's possible that Evil Rick might still exist via Operation Phoenix, though that's never confirmed. The Citadel was governed by the Council of Ricks, consisting of 6 notable Ricks. Rick Prime, yes, there were 2 with the same name. Quantum Rick, Maximums Rickmus, Zeta Alpha Rick, Rictiminus Sancheziminius, and spokesman Rick IV. Rick C-137 refused a seat on the council, earning the title The Rogue. Secretly, the Shadow Council of Ricks, aka the Brotherhood Council, held true power. They represented major Citadel industries and included Ricks modeled after real-world elites like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. Other known members: Rick D. Sanchez III, Simple Rick's Factory, Garment District Rick, Fashion, and Shake Rick, Fuel. All but 2 were executed by Evil Morty after his election. In the Citadel episodes, we are introduced to a lot of other interesting versions of Rick, such as Simple Rick, who appears in the Simple Rick's Wafers ad and discloses how the Simple Rick's wafers are made. He was originally from Earth, but 16 iterations off the central finite curve, meaning Simple Rick is genetically identical to other Ricks but had somewhat different ambitions. This offers the safe assumption that in his dimension, he is not the smartest man in the universe. It is revealed that he was contained in a room, strapped to a chair, and wore a helmet that forces him to relive the same happy memory of little Beth's 3rd birthday over and over again. The brain chemicals that are produced by his happiness were liquefied by a machine attached to his helmet and were made into the primary ingredient for Simple Rick's wafers. He appears again later after Rick J22 killed the regional manager Rick. As Rick J22 was later cornered in the Flavor Core, he was J22's only hostage. After Rick J-22's demands of a portal gun were met, he attempted to rescue Simple Rick with it by firing a supposed portal to freedom and pushed him in. Unfortunately, the portal gun was actually hacked as its coordinates were locked onto the blender dimension, and Simple Rick was torn into shreds within seconds. Simple Rick is very similar to Rick C-137 before the death of his family. Rick C-137 was attempting to discover interdimensional travel, but his experiments kept failing. After Rick Prime arrived and offered him the technology outright, he turned down the offer and decided to give up on science and focus on his family. Had Rick C-137 not lost his family and ended up on a lifelong revenge hunt that turned him into the Rick we know today, it's very likely he would have lived a life similar, if not almost identical, to Simple Rick's. We're also introduced to a similar Rick in the Fear No More episode, a Rick named Young Rick. When Morty and Fearhole Rick arrive to the Smith residence, a green portal appears following a pink explosion as Young Rick covers Diane from the pink fire as they crash land on the floor. Young Rick was protecting Diane from a bomb sent by Rick Prime, much like what happened to the series' main version of Rick. Young Rick mentions how the bomb almost killed Diane and asks the Smith family to take care of her as he fades away and disintegrates into dust. Another interesting version of Young Rick is Memory Rick, who is a memory representation of a younger version of C-137 Rick in Bird Person's mind. His personality is based on Bird Person's memories of him, meaning his own memories prior to meeting Bird Person are generic and bird-themed. His personality differs significantly from his older counterpart, being more positive and helpful. He is excited by Star Wars battles, loves the idea of his own Vietnam, and disgusted at the state of his future self. He is described by Real Rick as an idealistic hipster douche. He is similar to his older self in that he is incredibly intelligent. He was able to find a way to continue his existence by transferring to his older self. He also shares his counterpart's indulgence, enjoying getting high and having fun. After encountering the real Rick, he accompanies him in his quest to retrieve Bird Person from his subconscious. During a battle with one of his memories of Tammy, he seemingly sacrifices himself to allow Rick and Bird Person to escape his consciousness to the real world. At the end of the episode, Memory Rick is revealed to have survived and transferred himself over to Rick's memories instead, living inside his child self's closet. However, the real Rick remembers him and travels into his own memories to find him. He's not upset that his younger counterpart opted to find a way to continue his existence and offers to make him real to share a beer. Memory Rick follows but decides not to become real after he realizes that doing so would mean he eventually becomes Present Rick. Memory Rick returns in the episode The Jerick Trap. After Jerry and Rick's minds get mixed together after an accident, Memory Rick helps save both of their consciousnesses in an unseen scenario described as a whole action movie. The final separation of Rick and Jerry left Memory Rick stranded in Jerry's mind. His attempts to escape are fraught as Jerry's mind seems to believe all technology is made of springs and gears, thus not allowing Memory Rick to build anything to escape. Stuck in this world, he remains tormented by Memory Gene and has taken up making sculptures from the salvaged gears. By Hot Rick, Memory Rick has been able to make workable inventions out of the gears and springs, even create a workable car out of them until he was discovered by the real Rick. Memory Rick began enjoying life in Jerry's mind, being very supportive of the family. This changed Jerry's memories of him, causing Jerry to remember Rick fondly, which drew the attention of Rick. Memory Rick was transferred into Rick's desktop-like ant farm brain in a digital landscape with a futuristic house. This house consisted of parts that were advanced enough for Memory Rick to escape, and hopped into Beth's mind. After learning that real Rick has separated his memory of Diane from his mind, Memory Rick manipulates Beth into going into the sub-basement and allowing him access to real Rick's transferred memory of Diane. Memory Rick does this by inserting himself into Beth's memories and brainwashing her into thinking that this is how they stay a family while giving her the skills necessary to complete this. After Beth connects her brain to the ant farm brain containing the memory of Diane, Memory Rick travels to that memory, leading to Memory Rick and Memory Diane lovingly embracing before moving back into Beth's brain. Memory Rick leaves to find out why Beth is taking so long to return to Memory Rick's ant farm brain, discovering that she has gone rogue, and then comes back to find that Memory Diane has awoken one of Beth's memories of her past self, leading to an outbreak of Memory Beth's gaining awareness of the fact that they are memories who all try to kill Memory Rick. The couple goes to Beth's recent memories to try to talk to her in real time, but are stopped by multiple memory Beths who have become sentient and desire to kill the two. The duo manage to escape into Beth's car as she flees after killing Space Beth. Beth then decides to drive a car off a cliff against the wishes of her memory parents, but is stopped by Rick and a resurrected Space Beth. As Beth tearfully breaks down at her conflicting memories, Memory Rick and Diane are captured by the Memory Beths, but before they're killed, Real Rick gives a heartfelt speech to the real Beth, which successfully distracts all the Memory Beths long enough for Rick to sedate the real Beth. After Beth's memories are corrected, the real Rick tells the family that Memory Rick and Diane are gone. In reality, Rick built Memory Rick and Diane their own independent ant farm where they can be together forever and shoots it into space, warning the duo that he will explode it if they ever try to leave. The two accept this arrangement, content that they have found each other. In the first Citadel episode, Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, the first different version of Rick that we see is Cyclops Rick, who was, as you can guess, sporting just one eye unlike other Ricks, and also has orange skin color. Next to him we see the Cronenberg version of Rick, who originates from the Cronenberg dimension and alongside his Morty takes a portal to a recently Cronenberged version of Earth after they discovered that C-137 Rick turned the entire population except Beth, Jerry, and Summer into Cronenbergs. Cronenberg Rick and Cronenberg Morty did this because they accidentally turned the entire population of Cronenberg world into normal humans and wanted a world where they would fit in. There's also a yellow shirt Rick who is paired with blue shirt Morty, both of whom are similar to the originals, as only the colors of their shirts are swapped. This version of Rick is also shown in Rick's backstory, attacking Rick C-137. We see a cowboy version of Rick, whose dimension is most likely set in a setting where everyone is a cowboy or cowgirl. It is possible that he and his Morty might be a reference to Back to the Future Part 3, which features Rick and Morty's inspiration, Doc and Marty, in the Old West. We are then shown Aqua Rick, who, as you can see, has light blue spiky hair and a unibrow that's not robotic for some reason. He also has a white lab coat that is not robotic either. He has a giant hinge mouth and light purple pupils, and his hands are robot claws. His fate as of the events of the Rick Shank Redemption is unknown, and he was never seen among the combatants who fought the Galactic Federation in that episode. We are also introduced to Afro Rick, an alternate version of Rick Sanchez with an afro, and of African American descent, and an alternate version of Rick Sanchez with an alien-like appearance named Alien Rick. There is also bootleg portal chemist Rick, who dies the moment he tries to escape through his bootleg portal. Cop Rick, who is a police officer of the Citadel and was the former partner of Cop Morty before killing him in the nightclub The Creepy Morty in Mortytown. The Rick SEAL team, which consisted of Rick D99, Eye Patch Rick, Earring Rick, Headbang Rick, and Cornrow Rick, all of whom are deceased now. Farmer Rick, who worked as a farmer on the Citadel for his trusted robot dog. Investigator Rick, who is one of the few characters who actually knew the truth about Evil Morty. Also, there are Ricks who are variations of certain movie characters such as Hothead Rick, who is a version of Rick who's based on Sonny Corleone. There's a version of Rick who's based on Vito Corleone, who is named Big Fat Rick. Another episode, besides Citadel episodes, that introduced interesting versions of Rick was Unmortricken. In this episode we meet James Bond Rick, Indiana Jones Rick, Nerd Rick, Nice Rick, John McClane Rick, and the most interesting of them all, in my opinion, Disheveled Rick, who is the first person to arrive at Rick Prime's trap and killed 3 of Rick Prime's clones prior. He was most likely unaware of the fact that the Dianes of other Ricks were killed, and with that, unaware of the Omega device. He killed Nerd Rick and Indiana Jones Rick, and was the final alternate Rick in the room, but he was then killed by Rick C-137 and Evil Morty. Comics have also introduced a lot of interesting versions of Rick, such as Rick C-132, who is the main character for most of the original comics run. Rebel Rick, who is a younger version of Rick who abandons his family to rebel against the Galactic Federation. Dumb Rick, who's an alternate version of Rick Sanchez from a dimension where Ricks are dumb and Mortys are smart. He murdered his Morty in his garage. Josuke Rick, a character in Rick and Morty issue 22 that resembles Josuke Higashikata from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Old God Rick, who is one of the most evil Ricks in the multiverse. Cronenberg Rick, Killer Droid Rick, Sci-Fi Politician Rick, Nega Rick, and Black Magic Rick came together to free him from his prison so he can help them take over the multiverse and grant them unlimited power. Seconds after he was summoned, Summer from the Prime Dimension flew the old spaceship of Rick C-137 with a neutrino bomb attached to it to the Rick's hideout, blowing it up and killing them all. As we've seen in Season 8, the Citadel is destroyed, which seems like the writers saying that the Citadel stuff is formally over with, similar to them tying things with Rick Prime in a previous season, which makes me think that we might not see a lot of other versions of Rick in the future. However, we still have other medias like comics, which will introduce a lot more Ricks than the series has ever done. Who's your favorite Rick version and which version do you want to see more? Let me know in the comments.